It always ends the same way, you questioning yourself while she walks away untouched. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't explain. She just leaves you spinning in your own confusion, wondering how someone could cause so much damage and still look so composed. That's the brilliance of the narcissistic woman. She never fights to win. She makes you fight yourself. And by the time you realize it, she's already taken the one thing she truly wanted: your emotional control. Most men think narcissists win because they're cruel. They don't. They win because they understand energy. Yours. But here's the truth no one tells you. They only win until you stop playing the game the way they designed it. Number 1, the trap of the narcissistic dynamic. It never starts toxic. That's the first lie the narcissistic dynamic tells you. It starts perfect. She doesn't just notice you, she studies you. She mirrors your values, your humor, your rhythm. She finishes your sentences and tells you things about yourself you didn't even know you'd shown. You feel seen, understood, chosen. For a man who's spent his life trying to be enough, that feeling is intoxicating, because she doesn't just admire you, she reflects you. You don't fall in love with her, you fall in love with the version of yourself she's projecting back at you. That's how it begins, not with deception, but with perfect emotional synchronization. In psychology, it's called mirroring, and it's the most seductive form of manipulation that exists, because it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like magic. You think, finally, someone who gets me. What you don't realize yet is that she's building the blueprint she'll later use to dismantle you. Every strength she praises, she's taking notes on. Every vulnerability you share, she's storing away. Ammunition for the day admiration turns to control. But here's the trap. Narcissistic women rarely need to force control. They make you offer it. Through charm, attention, and emotional attunement, they get you to hand over your power willingly. Because it feels like trust. And when you do, she becomes the center of your emotional world. It doesn't happen suddenly. One day you're thinking for yourself. The next, you're thinking through her. What she'll say, what she'll feel, what she'll think. That's the moment you stop being a man with boundaries and become a mirror with heartbeat. Most men think narcissistic women win because they're cold or cunning. That's not it. They win because they understand human hunger. The hunger to be seen, validated, desired, deeply, relentlessly. They feed that hunger until it becomes dependence. And once you depend on someone for identity, they don't have to fight you for power. You'll hand it to them every time. That's the real trap, not her control. Your willingness to give it away in exchange for being understood. Number 2, why you fell for her. If you've ever fallen for a narcissistic woman, it probably didn't happen because you were naive. It happened because you were ready to feel something you hadn't felt in a long time. Seen, valued, wanted without effort. That's what makes the narcissistic bond so powerful. It doesn't prey on weakness. It preys on longing. She finds the parts of you the world has ignored. The quiet ambitions, the buried insecurities, the strength that's gone unnoticed, and she spotlights them with surgical precision. In her presence, you don't just feel admired, you feel understood. That's the first hit of emotional intoxication, and it's lethal. She doesn't flatter you like others do, she frames you. She says things like, "You're not like most men." You think deeper than others. "I can tell you've been through a lot. That's why I feel safe with you." Those lines aren't just compliments, they're hooks. They bypass logic and go straight to the part of your psyche that's been starved for validation. Because every man, no matter how confident he looks, has that one wound. The need to be seen without judgment. And narcissistic women sense that wound instantly. They don't love you for who you are. They love you through what you need to believe about yourself. That's why the bond feels sacred. You tell yourself, "She gets me. She sees me in ways no one ever has." But the truth is, she's reflecting your own ideal back at you. She's mirroring the version of yourself you wish were real all the time. That's why leaving her feels impossible. You're not just walking away from a person. You're walking away from the mirror that made you feel whole. It's not love you're addicted to, it's self-recognition. And that's what most men miss. You weren't addicted to her. You were addicted to you, seen through her eyes. That's why no amount of logic, red flags, or advice could break the bond. Because it was never built on her reality. It was built on your reflection. But once you understand that truth, Once you see that she didn't give you love, she gave you a version of yourself to chase, something inside you begins to shift, because you can't be controlled by the illusion once you recognize it's yours. Number 3. The emotional casino. You don't realize it at first. You think it's passion, that magnetic pull between two people who just can't stay away. But what feels like passion is actually pattern. You're not in love with her. You're gambling with your peace. A relationship with a narcissistic woman runs exactly like a casino. She doesn't let you win all the time. She lets you win just enough. One day, she floods you with affection, texts all day, compliments, touches, promises. The next, she's cold, distant, unreachable. You try to figure out what changed, what you did wrong. But there's no logic to it. Because logic isn't the point. Leverage is. In psychology, it's called intermittent reinforcement. When rewards come unpredictably, your brain releases far more dopamine than it does from consistent affection. You become addicted, not to her love, but to the uncertainty of when it might return. And the worst part? You start working harder for it. Every time she pulls away, you chase. Every time she gives a little, you attach deeper. You think you're fixing the relationship, but you're only tightening the leash. That's the hidden brilliance of narcissistic conditioning. She doesn't need to control you directly. She just teaches your nervous system to crave her approval the same way gamblers crave the next win. You stop needing peace. You start needing permission. I remember that loop vividly. She'd ignore me for days, and the silence would crawl under my skin. Then, just when I was ready to walk away, she'd call, soft voice, sweet tone. I miss you. And suddenly all the pain evaporated, replaced by that dizzy chemical rush of relief. That's when I realized I wasn't addicted to her affection. I was addicted to the end of pain. Every I love you, every apology, every late-night confession felt like oxygen after drowning. But that's not love. That's withdrawal. And just like in any casino, you never actually win, because the house, her control, always collects in the end. Most men stay stuck in this loop for years, mistaking chaos for chemistry. But here's the truth. If love keeps you anxious, it's not passion, it's programming. When you finally step back from the game, the spell starts to break. You see that she never gave you peace. She sold you emotional highs wrapped in pain. And the moment you stop betting your sanity for another hit of validation, you finally cash out. With something she can't ever touch again, your control. Number 4. The illusion of control. Narcissistic women don't control you by power. They control you by reaction. That's the secret most men never understand. They don't need to dominate your life if they can dominate your emotional rhythm. Once they know how to provoke you, they can predict you. And once they can predict you, they can control you. That's the illusion of control. The game where you think you're trying to fix things, but you're actually feeding the very dynamic you're trying to escape. She doesn't need to win arguments. She just needs to keep you arguing. Because as long as you're emotionally engaged, you're still playing on her board. You raise your voice, she grows quiet. You explain logically, she pivots emotionally. You try to prove your integrity. She questions your motives. And no matter what you do, the conversation never resolves. That's because resolution was never the goal, reaction was. A narcissistic woman thrives on emotional supply. Your energy, your focus, your anger, your need to be understood. She doesn't need you to adore her. She just needs to matter. Even hatred feeds her ego, because it means she still has your attention. I learned this in the hardest way, during one of those long circular arguments that leave you drained but somehow guilty. I remember thinking, if I could just make her see my side, we'd finally have peace. But the more I explained, the more she twisted my words, and I realized she didn't want understanding. She wanted control over my state. That's when it hit me. My reaction was her reward. The emotional energy I kept giving her, frustration, justification, attention, that was the fuel that kept her power alive. It's not that she won the fight, it's that I never stopped fighting. Once you understand that, everything shifts. You stop arguing for clarity. You stop explaining to someone who thrives on confusion. You stop pouring logic into a black hole that only feeds off emotion. You start doing the one thing she can't handle: nothing. Detachment isn't coldness, it's self-preservation. Because when you stop reacting, she stops receiving. And without emotional supply, her control collapses on its own. Narcissists don't fear confrontation, they feed on it. What they can't stand is indifference, because indifference is silence without vulnerability, it's presence without permission, and it's the one language a narcissist cannot speak. Number 5, the collapse, losing yourself in her game. There comes a moment, usually quiet, rarely dramatic, when you realise you're no longer the man you were when it began. You catch your reflection one morning and something feels off. Not in your face, but in your eyes. You look tired, even when you've slept. Not physically, but spiritually, like a light's been dimmed behind your stare. That's what it feels like to lose yourself inside her game. It doesn't happen in explosions. It happens in erosion, one compromise at a time, one argument you didn't need to have, one apology you gave just to avoid another emotional storm. You start censoring yourself, trimming your truth down to whatever keeps the peace. You start replaying conversations in your head before you even speak them. You stop saying what you feel because you already know how she'll twist it. And that's when you start living in reaction to someone else's mood. Not your own principles. It's subtle, but devastating. You begin to shrink, not because she asks you to, but because her approval has become your oxygen. You stop trying to be respected. You just want to stop disappointing her. And when you reach that point, you're not in love anymore. You're in survival. That's how narcissistic control works, and it doesn't chain you through anger. It traps you through hope. You keep waiting for the version of her that used to love you, the one who once mirrored your soul. You tell yourself, if I just stay calm, if I just prove I care, maybe she'll come back. But that version was never real. It was bait, a reflection designed to keep you chasing what she already took from you, your peace. And the cruelest part is, she doesn't even have to punish you. You punish yourself. Every time you overthink, overreach, or over-apologize, you do her work for her. That's the collapse. Not the end of the relationship, but the end of self-trust. Because once you stop believing in your own perception, she doesn't have to gaslight you anymore. You start gaslighting yourself. I remember that stage vividly. The guilt, the confusion, the endless loop of, maybe it's my fault. It wasn't weakness, it was conditioning. That's what staying too long does. It doesn't just drain your energy, it rewires your identity. You forget that the man who entered this relationship already had worth, already had power, already had peace. But the truth is, you can lose yourself without losing your soul. It's still there, waiting behind the noise, and when you finally stop playing her game, that's who you meet again. Number 6. The shift, seeing the pattern. It's strange how truth doesn't come in lightning. It comes in whispers. For me, it arrived one night in silence. No fight, no shouting. Just her absence in the room, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. It just felt clear. Clarity isn't peace at first. It's painful, because you start seeing everything you didn't want to admit, how long you ignored the signs, how much of yourself you traded just to feel chosen. You see the pattern, not as random chaos, but as a structure, a game that was always designed to run on your energy. The charm, the confusion, the apology, the withdrawal, it's all there, the cycle looping endlessly, perfectly timed to keep you off balance. And suddenly, you realize something that changes everything. She never had power, she only had access. Every emotional reaction, every argument, every late-night text you sent trying to make things right. Those were deposits into her control. And the moment you stop paying in attention, the structure begins to collapse. That's when it hits you. She doesn't actually want peace. Peace ends the game. Peace exposes the truth. What she wants is movement. Your emotional movement. Because movement means energy, and energy means she still matters. But when you finally see the pattern, the illusion breaks. You stop blaming yourself. You stop asking, why does she do this? And you start asking, why do I stay? That question is the first breath of freedom, because it shifts focus from her to you. You realize that she's not your captor anymore, your reactions are. You've been playing her game by instinct, not choice. And once awareness enters the equation, instinct dies. It's not anger that frees you, it's understanding. Anger still connects you to her energy. Understanding disconnects you completely. You begin to watch her behavior like a movie you've already seen. The lines don't sting anymore, they make sense. You don't feel betrayed, you feel informed. You're no longer a character in her drama, you're an observer of it. And that's when real power returns. Not explosive, not loud, but quiet, certain, unshakable. Because the moment you see the pattern, you no longer need to fight it. You simply walk through it untouched. That's the shift. Not from love to hate, but from confusion to consciousness. And consciousness is something no manipulator can survive in. Number 7. The rule of emotional starvation. Once you see the pattern, the next step isn't confrontation, it's starvation. Not physical, not verbal, but emotional. Narcissists don't feed on logic or outcomes, they feed on energy. Your attention is their oxygen, your reaction, their currency, your emotional availability, their empire. Take that away and they can't breathe. But here's the paradox, they've trained you to feed them even when you think you're fighting them. Arguing, explaining, defending, even trying to set boundaries in the wrong way. All of it gives them exactly what they want. Because to them, conflict is connection. If you're reacting, you still care. And if you care, they still matter. That's why silence hurts them more than shouting ever could. That's why calm confuses them more than anger. When you stop giving emotional energy, you take back something far more powerful than revenge: freedom. I remember the first time I applied emotional starvation. It wasn't about playing cold or pretending not to care. It was about stillness, choosing not to perform in a play I didn't audition for. When she tried to bait me with sarcasm, I didn't defend. When she ignored me, I didn't chase. When she tried to provoke guilt, I didn't absorb it. I just stood still. At first, it drove her mad. She threw every old tactic at me: anger, charm, pity, even nostalgia. But the moment she realized she couldn't move me, she began to lose her balance. Because narcissistic power doesn't survive in neutrality. It needs reaction to exist. That's the rule of emotional starvation. The less you respond, the faster the illusion collapses. It's not about winning. You don't win by beating her at her own game. You win by refusing to play it. You don't heal by proving her wrong. You heal by becoming unreachable to her tactics. When your peace becomes non-negotiable, her manipulation becomes irrelevant. Because peace doesn't feed chaos, it starves it. And that's the moment the dynamic flips. Completely. She doesn't lose control of you, she loses interest in you. That's how narcissistic women always lose. Not when you fight them, but when you stop being food for their ego. And in that silence, in that stillness, you realize something powerful. You never had to destroy her. You just had to stop nourishing the version of yourself she could control. Number 8. The rebirth of self-respect. Freedom doesn't begin when you leave her. It begins when you stop needing her to make sense of you. At first, detachment feels empty. After months, maybe years, of being defined by her attention, the silence feels foreign. You'll catch yourself waiting for the chaos to return, for the next message, the next emotional hit. And when it doesn't come, it almost feels wrong. That's what healing looks like in the beginning: uncomfortable peace. Because peace doesn't feel familiar yet. Pain does. But slowly you start to feel yourself again. Your thoughts come back. You remember what real laughter sounds like, the kind that doesn't depend on someone else's reaction. You start to move differently, slower, lighter, quieter. You stop checking your phone. You stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen. You stop imagining closure because you realize closure isn't something she can give you. It's something you build yourself. That's when self-respect starts to return. Not as pride, but as peace. You begin to value your stillness more than her attention, your sanity more than her approval, and your solitude more than her presence. It's subtle, but profound. You stop living in survival and start living in sovereignty. You stop waiting for validation and start enjoying self-trust. And for the first time in a long time, you realize you don't miss her. You miss who you were before her. And then it hits you. That version of you isn't gone. He's been waiting behind all the noise, patient, quiet, intact. He's the man who didn't need anyone to remind him who he was. And now, he's finally back. Because the truth about healing from a narcissist is this: you don't rebuild yourself, you return to yourself. The parts she tried to twist, silence, and shame, those are your power. And once you reclaim them, you realize the victory was never about beating her. It was about remembering who you were before you forgot. Number 9. The man who no longer plays. There's a moment in every man's healing when something inside him shifts forever. It's not loud. It doesn't come with revenge or proof. It comes in silence, a quiet knowing, I'm not playing anymore. The narcissistic woman's power ends not because she changes, but because you no longer respond the way you used to. She calls, you don't flinch. She provokes, you don't defend. She disappears, and you don't chase. At first she won't understand it. She'll test you again, not because she wants you back, but because she needs to know if the door to your emotions is still open. And when she realizes it isn't, something remarkable happens. She loses interest. Because the one thing a narcissist can't control is a man who no longer seeks control in return. You've outgrown the game. You've stopped being predictable. And without your reaction, the illusion she once used to dominate you crumbles under its own weight. But here's the deeper truth. The one most men never reach. Detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. You don't stop caring because you've become hard. You stop caring because you've become whole. You no longer need her chaos to feel alive. You no longer need her silence to feel peace. You no longer need her validation to know your worth. You've evolved from reacting to leading, not her, but yourself. You've learned that composure is not passivity, it's command. That strength is not aggression, it's control over your inner world. And that love, when it's real, never demands the death of your self-respect. That's what mastery looks like. Not dominance, not revenge, not proof, just peace. The kind of peace that doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't compete. The kind that stands firm in silence and smiles at chaos without moving an inch. You become the kind of man she can't manipulate. Not because you're above her, but because you're finally within yourself. And that's how narcissistic women stop winning. Not through punishment, but through presence. Not because you've beaten them, but because you've outgrown the need to. You stop playing the game and the board disappears. When you finally walk away from the game, you don't feel triumphant. You feel quiet. There's no grand finale, no fireworks, no last word that makes it all make sense. Just silence and the strange peace that follows it. You start to realize she never really won. She just knew how to play a game you didn't even know you were in. And once you stopped reacting, she stopped existing in the space she once controlled. That's how all of this ends. Not with revenge, but with release. Not with proving her wrong, but by no longer needing to. 5 years from now, you won't be talking about her anymore. You'll be building things again, sleeping deeply, laughing without guilt. You'll look at peace not as boredom, but as power, the kind that can't be shaken, bought, or taken away. You'll attract differently too. Because calm doesn't chase chaos, it attracts its opposite. You won't need drama to feel alive. You'll feel alive just by being grounded, and the world will feel safer inside your presence, because you'll feel safe within yourself. So the question isn't whether narcissistic women always win. It's whether you'll keep giving them the only weapon they've ever had, your reaction. What's it going to be? Keep spinning in the same loops, searching for closure from people who feed on confusion, or step off the board entirely and reclaim the one thing they can never imitate, your peace. Because once you master your calm, no one controls you again. Not her, not anyone. Your choice, your life. Start now.